Tonight, Batman gets freaky with Lois Lane, and I'm only kind of exaggerating that point. Batwoman, following up after Future's End, decides to stay in a Future set issue, confusing everybody that reads it. And to be or not to be in the Trinity of Sin? That is the question. All that and more tonight on the Not So New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 163 of the Not So New 52. I am your host and light week. We barely have anything to talk about. That's not true. I mean, looking at the end of the month, there's a fifth week coming up and that one has only 9 issues. That's much more along the lines of barely anything. This one, however, has 12 and I consider 12 to be a blessing, especially when I look at the in-between week and see yet another 16 comics, goddamn you DC. Anyway, like I said, not a lot to really talk about up top here. It is a pretty light week without that much going on. The only thing that is really of note here is Green Lantern is still ongoing with its event. Justice League, Geoff Johns managed to catch up on his deadlines and got back up to issue 35, where every other book has been. And we got a brand new number 1, which is Trinity of Sin, but I will of course go through the list of all the books real quick, just so you know what's coming up. In no particular order, we have Batman and Robin, Batwoman, Red Hood and the Outlaws, Batman/Superman, Supergirl, Green Lantern New Guardians, Justice League, Teen Titans, Trinity of Sin, and our 3 weeklies, Batman Eternal, Future's End, and World's End. So, yeah. I don't really know how to segue into the episode properly. You'd think after doing this for over 3 years, I'd have a better time with that. Books. Trinity of Sin number 1, written by DeMatteis, art by Yvel Guichet. So this is following the eponymous Trinity of Sin, which is Phantom Stranger, Pandora, and The Question, 2 of which just wrapped up their own books, and the third of which is pretty much being introduced in this one. So we open up with the Earth swallowed in darkness, whatever reason it may be. This narration over the top is saying, oh, it was glorious night for so long, and then there was light, and it started as a pinprick, and then drowned away my whole world of shadows. And I was so upset by it and blah, 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 but I waited, ages passed, and then finally the darkness stirs again and it says, Nimra, my servant. So the Earth gets enveloped in darkness once more. We then cut to Chicago, where we come to The Question, and he's looking at himself in the mirror and he's like, I don't even know who I am. I was in that Trinity that was all sentenced at once. They never once said my name or whatever. I don't know who I am, and I don't have a face anymore. I know nothing about myself. And so we see it's implied that he is taken on the form of a man named Joseph, and Joseph is coming down the stairs to a woman he boards with named Abigail. And Abigail's just having a sip of tea, just like, oh, you can't sleep either, neither can I, ever since my husband died. But, hey, at least we got each other, we got company in each other. And as she is telling him all of this, all of a sudden her arm changes into this horrific bloody demon arm. And as we look up, we see his Joseph persona has gone away, Abigail's no longer there, and it's a giant horned demon. And he just throws Question across the room. When Question lands, he sees the body of Abigail with her throat slit open. So Question's like, I finally, despite the fact I don't know where I belong or anything like that, this woman, this place at least gave me hope that maybe I could find something, and now it's been ripped away from me. So I feel like an idiot for believing in that, but mostly I hate whoever just took it away from me. And we see that the beast's name is Yaaka, and he's working for behest of his master, whoever that is. But regardless, Yaaka goes and tries to attack Question. Meanwhile, Golden Gate Park, we see a giant storm of protoplasm, whatever. Phantom Stranger and Dr. Terrence 13 are both watching it. He's giving all the readings to Phantom Stranger, saying it's crazy. I don't know. There's something in the middle though. There's some sort of signature. And Stranger's like, all right, well, I got to go check it out. So he goes up into the storm, and on the inside, he finds the ghost of a young boy that he can sense was murdered before his time, dragged away from his family, and he doesn't realize that he's dead, and he's just been festering here for so long until finally he couldn't hold it back any longer, and he turned to this big psychic storm. So Stranger embraces the boy. He even talks about, like, yeah, I'm Judas Iscariot. That's my real name. And now I'm acting like Jesus by taking this young boy and literally sending him up to heaven. And so he opens up a hole to heaven. The boy goes up, and Dr. 13 is like, wow, that was really cool, Stranger. You're super awesome. And then all of a sudden he gets stabbed through the chest with a giant flaming sword. And we see the next giant demon come in. I'm sure it has a name. Zalcote. It's like a giant cobra-looking thing. And Stranger's just like, that dude was my best friend, and you killed him. Why would you do that? And she's like, haha, his soul is stuck inside of my sword now, and you will be joining him at behest of my master. And so Zalco keeps on attacking Terrence 13, or not Terrence, Phantom Stranger. And Stranger's like, this is the first time in my history, as my last book ended, where I'm free to do whatever I want with my life, and I've been doing merciful stuff, but right now I'm fueled with rage. So then we cut over to southern India, where Pandora is enjoying a beach, and she's just, man, I haven't been here forever, and it's great to come here after hundreds of years. And as she feels a sense of freedom upon her, all of a sudden a giant wave comes up that has a face on it, and it introduces itself as Saiden, who's working for a master, saying, hey, I've come for you, and not only, like, if you resist, not only will I attack you, I will attack every other human being on this beach and kill them all. And she's like, you can! So she transforms into her normal Pandora appearance, and she gets into a whole thing about, like, in my book, I believed that I was the mother of sin. I was the worst of the worst, but I have come to realize that I embrace the light, the peace of humanity, and I will be able to use that against you to transform the world into goodness. And the monster's just like, all right, well, that's stupid. Check this out. And he just floods the beach with a giant wave, killing, like, tons of people. Pandora's drowning in the ocean. We cut between Question and Stranger also getting beaten in their respective fights. And Pandora's like, I can feel a connection to them. I don't know why. I don't usually feel a connection to them, but I feel like I have to do something. And we see her using whatever power she has to be able to teleport all of them to her, but also it looks like they managed to take care of their own demons just beforehand anyway. So they managed to all show up on the same beach. Pandora and Stranger recognize each other because they did a whole storyline together. But Question's like, what the hell am I doing here? What did you just do? And she's like, I saved our lives, I think, but like there's some sort of connection between us. We need to explore that. And Stranger's like, you stupid, I need to go back to the demon that took the soul of my friend. He might still be in the sword. Don't you know anything about loss? And then Pandora looks over at the beach and just be like, yeah, all these people just died because of me. Maybe don't come at me with your greater than thou bullshit right now. And she's like, sorry, I'm just upset. And she's like, I get it, we're cool. And then Question's like, no, we ain't. Keep me out of this. I don't want anything to do with you guys. For all I know, you guys are the reason that, like, I was treated so unfairly is because I was next to two horrible people like you. I'm totally innocent. I'm out. And she just disappears. And Stranger and Pandora are like, all right, well, I guess we'll just continue on without him because really we don't want him around either. We get a little glimpse to him going back to Abigail and, like, caring for her body. And then some other glimpse to... I think it's Terrence 13, but it's really unclear. But we see that Stranger has gotten his body back to Terrence 13's penthouse, and Stranger's just like, look, he said there was a master. I'm going to go find out who that is. I'm going to kill them, and I'm going to be unmerciful about it. And Pandora's like, now hold on. I've learned a lot about goodness and humanity. You should still continue to be good. And he's like, I don't care. Are you coming with me or not? And so he flies off. She follows suit. They go up out into space as we get the recanting of the first lines of the book of the darkness and blah, blah, blah. And we finally get this giant winged Tengu bird creature that is just swirling around in darkness. And maybe that's Nimra. I don't know, but that seems to be the fight. Okay. I mean, it's a threat to unite all three of them. Somehow they're connected, blah, blah, blah. It's what I expect from this book. You know, it's something of, we just very quickly got to get the team together. Question is refusing the call. I'm sure he'll show back up next issue for whatever reason. What is going to be the final building point to this? What are we looking for the discovery of? Why are people after the Trinity? I don't know, but I'm sure we'll get there. As for this particular issue, it doesn't have much to it. It's not that it's not unimportant. Clearly it is for setting things up. It just doesn't feel like there's anything happening yet. If we just had 2 pages at the beginning of the next issue that were like, Pandora and Phantom Stranger teamed up and Question said no, and then we just kept going with the issue, I think that's all I would have really needed. So this is more so for people who weren't reading any of that other stuff beforehand. So I'm going to give this one a 6.5. That sounds right. Sure. It's just shy of good. It's not actually there, but it's fine. Green Lantern New Guardians number 35, written by Justin Jordan, art by Brad Walker. This is the next part of the Godhead event, and currently all you need to know going on in the event is that the New Gods, in an effort to find the life equation, took one of each of the lantern rings. Didn't work because they misread the prophecy or whatever, and they actually needed the dude who had all the colors in him, aka the White Lantern, Kyle Rayner. So we open up with them recapping exactly that, saying, yeah, they got all the color things, and someone is telling this to Kyle. Turns out it's the Guardians themselves. And they're like, yep, they're coming for you. And Kyle's like, what? Why? What did I do? And he's just like, well, you went beyond the source wall and you came back, and that's impossible. And he's like, okay, well, it's possible because I did it. And it's like, okay, let me rephrase. It's possible because you did something to rewrite reality when you were on the other side that made it possible. And they point out like, oh yeah, we have had a couple of reality warping stories recently. Are you saying that that's like just a power I have now? I'm not a god. Why'd they attack the court? And so they point out, okay, beyond the source wall is not the source. It's very confusing, but it's actually on the other side of the source wall is the reservoir of the emotional energy and the life equation, which is what constructs the universe. When you went to the other side, you changed the life equation, and it allows you to do some crazy ass stuff. So you brought a piece of the equation back with you, and because of that, you can do literally anything, and therefore you're also a target. And so Kyle's like, okay, and that's why you wanted me to stay hidden, and like everyone in the universe thinks I'm dead. Okay, I get that, but like, why didn't you just tell me? You know, you've had me going around doing this great stuff. Why couldn't you just tell me? And it's like, oh, well, you know, we didn't force you into anything you did. It's like, no, you just lied and manipulated me. That sounds real familiar for little blue guardians in charge of the Green Lantern Corps, if you know what I'm saying. And just like, whoa, okay, hold on. If you want to compare us to the previous guys, we get it, that's fine or whatever. But right now, we are doing what we need to do to keep everything in the universe safe. And it's like, yeah, really? Okay. Who the hell is coming after me? How about you explain that part? And it's like, okay, well, they're new gods, but they're older than us. Like, they're older than anything else, and they're strong as hell. And they're going to come after you. And they're saying, like, look, we understand that you have problems trusting us. I get that. And at this point, Carol speaks up, and she's like, hey, wait a minute, hold on. You know the Corps got attacked, but none of you were with the Corps. How did you know that? And it's like, oh, well, we've been spying on them. We have little spyware in all the rings, and we know what's going on. And immediately Kyle's like, yeah, of course you do. Of course that's the way that you solved it. And the Guardians are like, look, again, you want to hold us accountable for that, so be it. But that's going to be later on. We would be idiots if we just let the Corps be completely without supervision while all of us were gone. Yes, we need to keep the universe monitored. And immediately Kyle and Carol are just like, you were supposed to be different. We thought you were the cool Guardians. Instead, you're the lame ones. And they're just like, well, we did what we thought was right. And there's like, okay, well, you lied to us. You expect us to trust you. I don't even care anymore. I'm going to go, I'm going to check to make sure that the Corps are okay, and I'm going to go help my friends. And so him and Carol start zooming off. The Guardians are like, oh, dude, Did you not hear it? If the power inside of you is used by these new gods for the wrong purposes, you are literally handing the universe over to be destroyed. We cannot let that happen. And he's like, it won't be the first time. Well, it'll barely be like the 8th time. And so the Guardians are like, nope, not letting this happen. So they all blast Kyle with their weird Guardian energy and manage to take him down. Carol's yelling at him like, what are you doing? She's like, look, if he ain't gonna listen to reason, we're gonna do what we have to do to protect the universe. We were hoping he'd be on our side with this. So Kyle's being brought down and he's in pain, he's in agony, and he's like, stop it, stop doing this, stop it. And so he unleashes huge waves of White Lantern energy. And it starts blasting, the Guardian starts blasting Carol, and Carol's like, Kyle, you should probably let up a little bit. And he's like, I can't do it. Oh God, it's out of my control. I'm unable to stop this. And as Carol approaches and tries to stop him, all of a sudden, we see that she is changed to Alixe, aka Kyle's girlfriend from like his very introduction, the one who got fridged. And as he does this, immediately we hear a loud boom, and in stops Highfather. And Highfather's like, all right, enough of this. And Kyle's like, hey, could you help here, Mr. Strange Man? And he's like, mortals like you aren't supposed to have this power, man. You can see, like, this is what happens. This is, like, how badly it would end. I want to help you out here, and I can help you, but you gotta, like, work with me here. I'm not gonna force you. I'm not gonna tell you what you gotta do, but, like, you gotta, like, let me in, okay? And then I can help you out. And so Kyle looks down and he realizes, like, okay, yeah, I got to do this. So he passes on some of the White Lantern energy to Highfather. Highfather then casts it out into the universe around him and then just, like, swipes it away. And we see, like huge changes to the multiverse as far as I can tell, or at least the universe, but it's all just, like, temporary fizzles out. And he's like, all right, there, it's done. Kyle's now in control. Carol comes down. She's back to her normal self. The Guardians show up and just like, hey, we know who you are. We're not going to let you get involved here. We will stop you. And Highfather's just like, you guys are so misguided. You have no idea what you're messing with. Get out of here. And he just, like, casts his magic scepter, gets a boom tube going, and sends the Guardians far, far away. And Kyle's like, where did you put them? It's just like, somewhere they're not going to bother us. Anyway, let me talk to you, man. So at that point, Kyle's like, what, is this only a temporary thing? Am I only, like, temporarily under control right now? Is that what it is? And Highfather's like, yeah, look, the life equation is inside of you. It doesn't belong there, but, like, I can take it where it is belong. I've only delayed things. And Carol steps up like, hold on. Were you the one who attacked the cores? And he's like, yeah, no, I did that. I took a ring from each of you guys because I thought that's what we needed to do. And I figured if I went in and asked, you guys would not be cool enough to just give me one of each ring. Am I wrong about that? And they're like, no, that's fair. That's pretty fair. So Kyle's like, okay, you said you need to, like, take me somewhere in order to help me. Where's that? And he's like, oh, back in my home, New Genesis. I've got a boom tube here. And he opens up a portal and he's like, look, again, I'm not going to force you to do this. I hope you understand that. This equation in you, that's up to you. But, like, if you want to come with, you got to follow. And Kyle turns to Carolyn just being like, I don't want to be a god. I don't want to, like, rewrite the universe in my image. If this is, like, how much power I've got, I have no control over it. I don't have the right to say no to this. And Carol's like, I don't trust him. I think he's very clearly untrustworthy because he wants this level of power, but I do trust you and the choices you make, so wherever you go, I go. And they share a kiss as they step through the boom tube together. And that's the issue. I like it. See, that's the problem I've been having with this event. It's only been going for like 3 parts now, but the problem I've been having with this event is that the new gods do such blatantly villainous things, and then they say, oh, but it's all for the greater good, as if that's, like, something that's supposed to make them decent. This is the first time that we're getting an issue where Highfather comes in, he stops Kyle from being attacked, he helps the situation, and then he just openly says, like, look, I want to help you out here, but I'm not going to make you. You got to do this of your own volition. And he allows him to do so. Obviously, it's a whole gambit. Obviously, he knows what his answer is going to be to begin with, but, like, it makes the new gods seem like they could theoretically have a point here. Like, it's two opposite sides of right instead of just the utilitarian point of view versus actual goodness point of view. So yeah, I'm liking this more. I always like how, you know, these writers handle the concept of battling the good here. Justin Jordan's always done a good job of saying, here's a complicated situation. Nobody is actually wrong, but it is a argument that you need to have of like, what's the correct path to follow. So overall, I like it. I'm going to give this one, I'll give it a solid 8. I think it's a very, very solid issue, and I'm looking forward to seeing specifically this book of how we follow forward in the Godhead event. You know what I mean. Batman and Robin number 35, written by Peter Tomasi, art by Patrick Gleason. So last issue, Batman got the whole Bat family together and said, hey, I'm going to Apocalypse, don't wait up. And they were like, all right, if you're gonna, I guess we're gonna let you. And then he did. So we open up on Apocalypse, where Batman's cruising over in his Hellbat armor. He activates cloaking, and he arrives at a fire pit where some parademon-looking things are throwing just random creatures into the fire pit, saying like, all right, into the flames, here you go. And as they're doing so, all of a sudden they start get beat up by something they can't see. The lowlies, as they're called, are saved by Batman, and Batman proceeds to beat the crap out of all the parademons with cloaking on. And so he tells all of the lowlies, okay, you're all free, get out of here. As he turns to the parademons, like, tell me where Godfrey is. I want a location. And he just punches the parademon's eyes out as he continues to fly over Apocalypse. Eventually, though, something gets to him. He takes the gauntlet off of his arm and sees there's significant burning or something. And he's like, all right, well, keep an eye on that. Moving on. And he just keeps on flying forward. So then we cut back to the Batcave. Alfred is feeding Alfred the cat, Titus the dog, and Batcow the cow. And he sees that Red Hood, Batgirl, and Red Robin have all come back. And he's just like, yeah, I'm glad you guys would have changed your mind. And he's like, yeah, well, no, we're family. Of course we're not letting Batman do this alone. But we do have the issue of, we have no way of getting to Apocalypse. He has a mother box. We do not. There is no way to get a boom tube going. And Red Robin's like, well, Cyborg has a boom tube. We can just use his. And they're like, Cyborg is not going to be okay with that. So we're not going to be able to do it just by hand, you know? And that's where Alfred goes to the contingency part of the Batcave and pulls out Cyborg's little box and just like, if we got to get Cyborg taken out to save Master Wayne, we're going to need this. So before that, apparently what they need to do is talk to Batwoman and basically let her know, hey, no one else is going to be in Gotham. So she is off fighting a giant spider creature with guns on the end of each of its legs. She cuts off like 5 of its arms and just like, yeah, well, 3's good enough, now get out of here. And then the rest of the Bat family shows up saying like, hey, hi, how's it going? We're not going to be in Gotham. You're going to be in charge. And Batwoman's like, okay, what about Batman? Just being like, he's maybe not going to be back either. And then she's like, okay, when are you guys going to show back up? And it's like, anyway, here's a headset, and it'll have you talking to a friend who will let you know where the crime in Gotham is. Okay, bye. And they just leave off. And she's just like, all right, thanks for nothing. So back on Apocalypse, Calabac is talking to, as far as I could tell, a healing chamber for Darkseid. He's talking to Darkseid as if he's been like wounded or hurt ever since the battle for Earth Prime, Earth Zero. And Calabac's like, oh, everyone else on Apocalypse, like, people are starting to turn away from you, but I've stayed true, Darkseid, and therefore I've made this thing, and I'm going to help you open your eyes again, because if Apocalypse is good, Darkseid is good. So I guess he's doing something with that. Then we cut over to Cyborg, who's shown up in the Batcave, and all the Bat people are like, yeah, hey, so Batman, remember he set up all those hologram things to trick the Justice League to being away from the Watchtower? Turns out he didn't turn them off before he left. and we don't know how to stop them. So if you could just help us turn off the holograms, we've got a special chair right over here for you. Just go ahead and sit down in the chair. We'll get you all plugged in, buddy. And he's like, all right, yeah, no problem. I got no reason to distrust any of you guys. And then, of course, whatever plan goes into action, it zaps Cyborg, and then it's just like, okay, yeah, I feel bad. He was a cool dude. We shouldn't have done that. Alfred's like, don't worry about it. We're just making him think that he's back in high school. He's reliving his greatest football moments. Everything's fine. We're good. So let's start messing around with the boom tube tech. We'll figure out what to do. So they mention other things about like how they got the coordinates for it from Bruce's stuff, and how Alfred made some customized armor for each of them to withstand the apocalyptic atmosphere. And it all looks like Robin outfits, to the point where they all have the R as well. And so Batgirl and Tim finally get the boom tube activated. They go through, and the moment that they're about to like close the portal, Cyborg wakes up. He's like, what in the hell is going on here? And so he leaps through the portal. However, Titus the dog also was bit onto his ankle, and so Titus sleeps through the portal as well. And Alfred's just like, okay, that's a problem. So meanwhile, on Apokolips, Batman is literally just tearing through crowds of like soldiers and troops and all that. Eventually he makes his way up to where Godfrey is, and Godfrey is like, all right, I see you've changed your clothes into something more appropriate, but you have killed all of my men, and I'm sure that that's quite the accomplishment for you. And he's like, no, they're not dead. I've just taken all the fluid out of their ears, so they're not going to be able to stand, and I'm going to do something just as bad to you. And he's like, oh, I would have crushed you underneath my immortal boots if it was just me last time. And he's just like, well, prove it now, bro. And so he takes Godfrey, tosses him out the window, and seemingly like burns his face to cinders. I don't know. He looks messed up. And he basically tells me, take me to my son now. Like, we don't have a choice here. So we cut back over to some of the lowlies on Apokolips who are about to cannibalize one of their own. Boom tube opens up. The whole gang comes through. Tim Drake, Jason Todd, Barbara, and then Cyborg and Titus. And Cyborg's like, all right, we're here now. We might as well go ahead and do the thing. I'll help you save Batman. And all the lowlies are looking around like, ooh, look, fresh food. Let's eat them. So then we cut over to Calabac, who has set up a giant cannon that is powered not only by Damian's corpse, but also the Chaos Crystal that they've got there. And he fires it up at a nearby planet or moon and just destroys it. And we see that both Batman's side of things and the rest of the Bat family side of things all see that moment. And that's where we end. That's the moment. It's good. It's a solid enough issue. It's making Bruce seem very relentless in how he's going after this stuff. And yes, there is a threat to him, even despite the fact that he has this armor going on. As for the rest of the family, I don't know. Like, the fact that it's so already getting to Bruce in this hyper-specifically made armor, and then the rest of the family is able to just show up in Robin outfits, and it's like, yeah, whatever, we can last for a while. It's like, can you, though? It doesn't seem like you should be able to. It seems like that should be something that you land on Apokolips and you immediately burst into flames. But I get that wouldn't make a good story. It just kind of takes away from Bruce's side just a little bit. Having Cyborg there, I'm sure there will be a reason, but it is kind of funny, the fact that they brought Titus the dog along as well. I feel like that's just so when they do finally get to Damian, Titus can be there, and Damian will be like, oh, hey, look, it's my dog. So yeah, I'm going to say this one is I'll give it like a 7.5. It's not bad. It's definitely got some good moments to it, but I don't know. I kind of would have been just as fine if it were just Bruce doing like the one-man Western thing of going through and just John Wicking the entirety of Apokolips. I would have been totally cool with that. But I get it's more of a family aspect, so do what you got to do. Batwoman number 35, written by Marc Andreyko, art by Borges, Jeanty. So last numbered issue was Batwoman getting bit by Nocturna as she woke up and like turned into a vampire seemingly. Then we had the Future's End issue, which was her future team, which is introduced in this book as well, attacking her because she is a vampire. And then we get this random-ass fever dream of a story. So, just to clear up anything else, the team consists of Clayface, her sister Alice, Ragman, Etrigan, and of course Batwoman herself. So this one picks up, Batwoman's like, I've seen some weird stuff in Gotham recently, but this is as weird as it gets. And she's out in space around a satellite fighting some magical demons led by Morgan Le Fay, along with the rest of her team. And the title of the story is Mystery in Space, so clearly we're not supposed to understand why we're here yet, but regardless, this entire issue is just the fight. So Alice tells Batwoman to look alive. She fires off some darts from her suit that it pinned two of the demons to a satellite thing. Etrigan spits out some hellfire as Batwoman comes in and starts cracking necks of other demons. Ragman is getting attacked by a bunch of them, so Clayface comes in to attack. He gets stabbed through the chest by a demon, and Demon's like, seriously, bro? Like, I'm Clayface. What did you think that was going to do? And then he gets, engulfed in clay. We see Morgan Le Fay, her whole thing is she's going to a satellite to get a rock off the top, and then she says that, New Camelot shall be mine alone when she grabs it, but then it's whisked away from her because Batwoman's got a whip, and she just punches Morgan in the face. So Morgan fights back. Alice manages to dive into the way, and her helmet gets ruptured, so she's about to straight up die out in space. Batwoman says, Ragman, hey, get over here. I need you now for this. Morgan goes back for the rock. Etrigan gets it. And so Morgan just gouges out Etrigan's eyes with her thumbs and then seemingly possesses him. So I would say possess. It's more of just absorbing his magic, but regardless, he's out of the fight. Ragman comes over to help Batwoman, and she's like, hey, I need you to absorb my sister's soul now. And he's like, I only do that for bad people. It's like, trust me, she's a bad person. Do it. I can save her body later. I need her soul safe as well. So Ragman does it. There's an expulsion of energy, and she's like, did it work? And Ragman has Alice's soul now inside of him. I say Alice, it could also be Elizabeth, whichever side. She's coming down on this side. So she straps up Alice's body to the side of the satellite. It's like, all right, let's finish this fight up. So Ragman starts going in for the offensive, but then all of a sudden a bunch of his inner spirits or whatever start trying to leap out of his body, so he's not going to be any good. Clayface gets a hold of Etrigan, trying to save him before he's totally killed, but Morgan Le Fay fires off a shot and just turns him into a skeleton. Etrigan is dead, as far as anything else is concerned. And then she attacks Clayface, splatters him into a million pieces, but of course, he's Clayface. He just reassembles himself around Morgan this time. And as he tries to smother her with the clay, she uses some magic to harden it and then shatter it. So the Rock, once again, manages to... It looks like this satellite is actually a telescope of some sort. So she puts the Rock on the lens side of the telescope and then starts blasting it with magic. And that's when Batwoman comes up from behind and stabs her with a giant metal rod. So she starts expelling magical energy everywhere because, she's practically dead. Ragman redirects Kate over to a ship that I guess they just have now. So everyone gets inside, except maybe the bones of Etrigan. I don't see that anywhere. And they start rocketing their way back down to Earth. But they're being chased by demons. The demons start tearing apart the ship itself as they hit re-entry. Morgan Le Fay's on the windshield, going nuts as well. And so Batwoman says, okay, Ragman, you wrap up around me and Alice here. And then Clayface will wrap around you, and that magic plus the clay will be enough for us to survive re-entry. Here we go. And then they come down and everything goes to white, and we don't see how it ends. But that's the story. The next issue has a story title of How in the Hell Did We Get Here? So I'm assuming that that's all going to be backdated to getting the team together. But I will go ahead and say I had no connection to this issue. I had no reason to care about any of it. This is complete. This may as well be an Elseworlds story. Like, oh yeah, Batwoman's up in space, and then Morgan Le Fay's got a rock, and what's the rock gonna do? I don't know. Now Etrigan's dead. Oh no, but is he? I don't know, because I have no reference frame for anything that's going on in this book at all. Is it fun in a way? Yeah, I'd say it's stupid fun. Sure, why not? But like, I don't feel like there's consequences. I don't feel like there's any problem. And then on top of that, hey, what about the whole vampire thing from last issue? That kind of seemed like a big cliffhanger to leave on. Are we just not going to do that? So yeah, it's a bit of a mess. It's got a lot going on for it. I'm not saying that this arc is going to be bad, but doing the jump ahead thing, I could take for like half an issue max, but then the back half of the issue needs to tell me like, okay, and now you can start seeing how we get there. Spending the entire issue doing that and then telling me, wait a month, and then you'll get the first part of how it is we're going to get there. I'm just going to be like, no, I'm not interested anymore. You lost me. So it's got some problems structurally. I'm going to give this one, I think I'm just going to give this one like a 6. It just, I don't know. I had no engagement with it because it just didn't have anything to latch on to. It just expected me to be like, wow, this is zany. Can't wait to see how we get here for the entire issue. Red Hood and the Outlaws, written by Scott Lobdell, art by Geraldo Borges. So, God. All right, so we open up with Jason Todd sitting by the bedside of Roy Harper, who has been insanely badly burned. He is on death's door, and he's just barely holding on. And we don't know why, and Jason's basically saying, like, he's like, hey, don't worry, buddy. Everything's going to be fine. You're going to be cool. And Arsenal's just like, hey, man, can you go find Starfire? You need to save her. And Jason's like, hey, don't worry about it. I'm going to stay by your side. She's fine. She'll be okay. Just chill. And so he like turns on an IV or something to put him to sleep. And Jason sits back down and it's just like, how did it get this way? Flash to 4 days ago, where the last issue that we had, God, it was a whole thing where Starfire was about to kill this guy because he was an intergalactic slaver, and then he ended the issue with blowing his own head off. And so Jason and Arsenal are still looking down on that like, Jesus. What the hell do we do now? What are we even supposed to do? He just blew up his own head, and we literally just told Starfire not to kill this guy, and then he goes ahead and do it. She's not going to be that cool with it. And why would he even do that to begin with? And Jason's like, hey, don't worry about it. Some people, they just get super guilty or whatever. Don't worry about it. What's done is done. Let's just clean up the mess before his family finds out, and we can get out of here. And so Arsenal pulls out a DNA evidence annihilator where he syncs it with some form of DNA, and then it just causes a massive explosion that burns all of the matching DNA to a crisp. So they hop back in one of their spaceships, fly back over to the island that they live on, and they're like, okay, maybe we tell Corey that, like, the Green Lantern Corps came and picked him up, or, like, Lobo was responsible. How do we justify that this dude is no longer around anymore? And Jason's like, maybe just tell her the truth. I think she can handle it. And Arsenal, as they get back to the island, spots Corey on the beach, because that's the other thing that happened at the end of last issue, was she was pissed off. She drank some sort of liquid, and then she was suddenly passed out on a beach. And we see her waking up here, and in like the high tide, and she's got blackened eyes, and she's not responding, and she's like, oh God, what do? We got to get her help now. And then all of a sudden she just snaps to, her eyes are green again. She's like, hey, how's it going? And she blasts up into the sky with an incredible amount of force. And she's like, so, did you give that guy a stern talking to? Is he not going to do it again? And it's like, yeah, about that. And she's like, whatever, I'm sure it's fine. I'm going to bed. Good night. And Jason and Arsenal are like, all right, that was weird. So, we cut back to modern day. He's still sitting by the bedside. And all of a sudden, he hears someone enter, pulls his guns. It's Oliver Queen. And he's like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. You guys used to run in the same circles. That's a whole thing. And Oliver's like, yeah, totally. Put the guns away. I need to have a few minutes with my boy here. So Jason walks out of the room and leaves them be. We then see Starfire is relaxing. Turns out she's feeling a little bit exhausted and sick. And so Arsenal provides some soup. And he's like, hey, why this isn't normal. Like, you have never been sick. Can I like ask about that? Like, are you cool? And she's just like, oh, you're so caring and understanding, and I've never known what it meant to love a human until I met you. And Arsenal's like, okay, but you're not really answering my question. And she's like, oh, but I love you so much. And so he's like, okay, I love you too. That's sure, whatever. So then, I swear to God, Jason pulls up on the screen the villain that we got for like 3 pages before the entire last arc happened, and like saying, oh, this guy who threatened America is still out there. And I swear to God, I had to go back and read that issue because I don't remember this dude at all. But regardless, he's still apparently out there. And then Man-Bat pops up onto the screen and says, hey, remember me? I'm with Shade. Yeah, we were after Starfire, but then we just found evidence to clear her name. So we're all good. Just wanted to let you know that. Bye. And then all of a sudden, they get a little warning that they found that dude from 3 issues ago. And Red Hood's like, all right, let's go get him. So they go out to somewhere outside of New Orleans, and they are looking around trying to find this guy, being a little bit stealthy. And then Starfire's just like, all right, I'm done with this. And so she just goes blasting across the bayou into this little wooden hut. And inside is a ton of guys, all of them huge, all of them beefy, and they're attacking Starfire. Starfire gets a little overwhelmed, so she just blasts back out of the thing. She's like, you guys got it, bye. And so she flies off. Jason's like, hey, go take care of her. Figure out what's up. I'll take care of these guys. So Jason gets into the middle of the fight, and he realizes that all of these guys have some form of like syringe, like a gauntlet with some fluid flowing into them on their like ankles or wrists or stuff like that. And he's like, all right, that must be what's making them so beefy. And if I'm going to stand a chance here, I'm gonna need to take it. So he unclasps one of them from around one guy's ankle and goes to put it onto himself. And he's like, oh, I know that this is crazy to try, but dying is a hell of a lot worse. Trust me. And then we get Roy running to Starfire. She's super sad. She's super upset. She injects something into her wrist, and Roy's like, oh my, what's happening? Why? What's going on? And she's like, oh, I'm so weak. I'm sorry. I have to go. Stay away from me. And as Starfire flies off again, she once again makes a huge fiery exit, and that fiery exit is what burns Roy Harper to a crisp. So, yep. Look, I was upset when Scott Lobdell got back on this book, and I would love to say that, like, oh, I overreacted. He's totally got control of his narratives now. No, he doesn't. No, this is still just, like, that dude that was brought up, it had to specifically say, see Red Hood and the Outlaws 33. I went back and read Red Hood and the Outlaws 33, and he makes exactly 2 panel appearances across that book. And then we had an entire arc in between, and now we're expecting to be like, okay, but now we're back to it. Like, you didn't set him up in the first place. Why did we bother with that? Why are we coming back to it? Just, God, it's so frustrating, so annoying. And then on top of it, I opened up the trade today to read this because this is the first issue in this trade. And the very first image I see on the teaser image is freaking hell. You know, Scott Lobdell's other favorite use here in the new 52. God, this is just, no, not hell. It's Hellspont. That's it. It's the Damonite one. I'm so tired of this. I don't know. The issue itself isn't awful. It's just what it represents in the larger whole, but I gotta rate it off of that because otherwise I'd be giving this halfway decent rating. So I'm gonna say this is a 4.5. It's under the 5 mark, and I know this book gets canceled at 40. It can't come soon enough. Batman Superman number 15, written by Greg Pak, art by Diogenes Neves and Pascal Alixe. So last issue, we had Batman kind of starting to come to terms with who he is as Batman because, you know, memory loss and all that. But Superman went full on tyrant, and he was like, oh, I'm the law now. So we open up in Satanis's world, the dark edge of whatever, and Kaio is still in a cage being like, oh, are you entertained by my mischief and chaos bringing? And he's like, oh, yeah, this is great. This is fantastic. But the only reason this would be enjoyable is if there were a chance that the heroes could regain their memories. So what's the key to it? How would they do it? And Kaio's like, that's the beautiful part. All they'd have to do to get their memories back is want to remember. And whatever happens next, that's on them. So we see Batman is knocking at Lois Lane's door. And she's like, hey, didn't expect to see you again. He's like, yeah, I've had a rough night here before. I just saw people die, and I don't remember ever having to go through that. So can I come in? And she's like, oh, yeah, totally awesome. Scarecrow's still on the loose. Like, he disappeared without a trace. And Batman's like, well, not totally. I went back to my Batcave. And she's like, right, the Batcave. I've been there. You know, that location that you can tell me about? And he's like, yeah, nice try. Anyway, I've got a bunch of fancy doodads and whatnot. I figured how to plug in Scarecrow's name, and it told me where he is. So, yeah, I'm going to go take care of him. And Lois is like, and what are you doing pit stopping here? And he's like, well, want to come with me? And she's like, well, of course I want to come with, but like, why would you ask me? And he's like, I don't know, you're pretty good in a fight. Why not? And she's like, you're Batman, though. And he's like, no. That other guy was Batman. I'm in his skin, but I'm not him. And I want to do things differently. And I got to go finish the job or else other people are going to get hurt. And she's like, I mean, you're a lot more Batman than you realize if that's how you feel. But yeah, sure. Let's go ahead and go out there. So Batman reveals that in the cave he found an old Batgirl suit and he gives it to Lois. And so she gets dressed in it and they do some like playful sparring with each other. And he's like, oh, yeah, you know, I'm just taking it easy on you. And she manages to get a bow staff around his neck. And they're like face to face right now. And Batman's internal monologue is like, Jesus Christ, why hasn't Superman jumped on this one yet? She's freaking awesome. And so Batman literally starts flirting with her. And Lois calls him on it, just being like, okay, that's cute. Don't get me wrong. But like, that's not really Batman's style. And he's like, yeah, well, maybe it's my style. So she's like, hey, look, we got to get your memories back. That is a priority here. And he's like, why? I like the new me. Things are all right here. And like, I've still got his skills, so what's the problem? And all of a sudden, everything just starts exploding behind them. And we see that is Superman and Catwoman with an armed militia as they start tearing through Mangubat's robot army. And finally, they get down to like the last one, and Mangubat's like, no, please, I'm just another robot. Or you can kill me, but you'll never find Mangubat. And he's like, dude, you've got like lungs and stuff that I can see. Clearly you're the real one. And you have done all of these horrible, terrible things. And he lists off all these crimes. And Mangubat's like, I was framed. It was a hack job. My lawyer wasn't good. So he starts attacking a cop to try to escape, and the cops just immediately start whacking him with like nightsticks, start beating him, and Catwoman's like, nice, awesome, that's okay. They're going a bit heavy, Superman. We shouldn't let him die. And Superman's like, hold on, shut up, I hear something. And then in comes Batman on the Batcycle, front wheel to Clark's face, and he's like, oh, sorry, was that your face? My bad. So him and Lois come in, and they pull the cops off of Mangubat, and immediately Mangubat's like, Lois, is that you under that cowl? I knew you believed me. And she's like, no, I don't believe you. I just believe in you not being killed in the street. And he's like, well, you've given me enough time, and now everybody's in the same place. So then he starts, as far as I can tell, collecting technology to make himself bigger. And so he starts attacking everybody. Lois gets batted away as Superman gets hit. Batman's super concerned about Lois, but then Superman just grabs hold of Batman's neck, and Batman's like, dude, hold on, we're on the same side. And he's like, nah, I don't need any help. And he takes a bunch of scrap metal and starts wrapping Batman up into it, saying like, you're just another costumed freak like the rest of them. You're just going to get in my way. I am the only one who can handle this level of power, so therefore I am going to be the one who does it. And so he just puts Batman away, and Catwoman's like, oh, damn, this is a bit much even for me. So Catwoman pushes Lois out of the way of being attacked, but in doing so, she gets her leg impaled on some sharp metal, and she's bleeding pretty heavily. She's crying out in pain. Batman's like, oh, God, I just put a reporter in danger by putting her into a bed. This isn't a costume party. What the hell am I doing? So As soon as Clark hears the screams, he's like, whoa, okay, hold on. That's tickling something in my brain. I need to go take care of that. And so he takes out the metal, cauterizes the wound with heat vision, and is like, okay, now I'm pissed off. And so he goes to Mongubot and just lifts him up in the air. And he's like, oh, what are you doing, man? You're going to take me to trial, right? And he's like, no. There's a bunch of cameras and stuff around. People have joined this crowd. I'm going to break you into a million pieces, and then I'm going to do the same thing to everybody else like you on this stupid-ass planet. And so he's ready to 100% go too far, and Lois is like, Superman, hold on. It's not who you are. And Catwoman's like, shut up. He's happier this way. He's better off this way. And Lois is like, what is your problem? She's like, oh, no one was on my side when Mongubot was trying to kill me, so what's the problem here? So Lois is like, shut up, Cat. I don't want to talk to you anymore. So she goes and limps over to Batman in the cage and just like, you can stop him. I know you're Batman. You would know how to stop him. And he's like, what? I don't know how to stop him. He's just like, no, you just have to remember. You got to do it. And he's like, it's not that easy. And then in his internal monologue, like, oh, wait, hold on. It might be that easy. Because with me kind of wanting to remember, I felt this little tickle in my brain. And I was like, oh, okay, I can do this. But like, what's going to happen to the current me? This version of me is going to die. And so he looks at Lois and just like, Lois, I want you to know. She's like, I get it. They share a kiss. And then Batman's like, okay, got to remember. And we get a panel of him remembering everything, his whole tragic backstory and everything that came to be. And Lois is like, Batman, you good? And he's like, oh, God. Oh, Jesus. I just went through all my traumatic stuff again. I'm not okay. Okay. And he focuses and he's like, hey, Clark. And Superman can hear him like, what'd you just call me? He's just like, I called you Clark. I remember everything. You need to remember that too. If you still want to do this after you remember everything, by all means do it. But I don't think you'll want to. Just remember everything. And he's like, oh yeah, I can feel the tickle in my brain too. Okay. And so then Superman remembers everything. He sets down Mongubot, passes him over to the police, being like, here, take him to jail. Don't beat him anymore. And they're like, right, okay, sure. He tears open Batman's cage and they look at each other just like, man, we messed this one up, didn't we? And so it's like, yeah, totally. And Superman points out, like, dude, how I just experienced my memories, you just experienced yours. Are you okay? And he's like, yep. And he just turns and walks away. He's like, I'm not dealing with this right now. So Lois tries to give chase, like, Batman, hold on, but he's already gone. Catwoman tries to get Superman to still, go out, have some fun. He's, of course, not doing anything. Catwoman's like, all right, well, that was fun, bye. So she dips out. And then we get the two different things of Lois and Superman chilling out in Metropolis, and she's like, anything you'd like to say for the record? And she's just like, no, not really. She's like, okay, well, what about off the record? No. Look, a lot of stuff happened back there, but it scares me that was me, I wasn't being controlled or anything. That was me just without my history. So I'm a little bit terrified of that. I gotta go. And he just flies off. And then Alfred sees Bruce come in, looking through his father's library. And Alfred's like, oh, Master Bruce, I'm sorry you didn't come in. He's like, don't call me Bruce. I'm Batman. And he goes back into the cave and Alfred's like, yeah, great. So we get one last page of Lord Satanus and Kaio. And Kaio's like, wasn't that great? Look, they had to give up their own little happiness, and they saw how miserable they were in order to do that. Wasn't that awesome? And he's like, oh yeah, loved it. You're great at what you do, Kaio. And Kaio shakes the cage door and just like, so you're gonna let me out of here, right? And he's like, nah, I promised I wouldn't eat you, but you're far too fun. I'm gonna keep you around for a while. Let's go to a darker universe. And so he goes off to some other places. Kaio's like, no, and that's the end of the story where no one gets what they want. I like it. I think it. I enjoyed this entire little memory loss thing. Having Batman be the only thing that's holding him back from being happy at all is his past trauma and his inability to deal with it. I love that. I love that as an exploration of the character. Everything else going on in here is just also fun. I will say that the two artists are doing their absolute best to mimic Jay Lee's style. Neither of them are hitting it, but I also just don't like Jay Lee's style that much, so I kind of wish they would have just done their own thing, the pages where Diogenes Neves and Pascal Alixe get the farthest away from Jay Lee, where they're just doing their own thing, are, I think, the best pages. So, all that said, I'm going to say this is it's like a 7.5. I think writing-wise, this was a pretty good arc overall. it could have been a little bit more fleshed out on the Superman side. We did get focused on Batman, but I think the Batman's the side that I like the most because of that. So give and take there, but a 7.5 overall. Supergirl number 35, written by Tony Bedard, art by Jonboy Meyers. So last issue was a tie-in to Superman Doomed, but like not at all. And we got Supergirl being taken care of when she was at her weakest by a dude named Michael, who's in a wheelchair, and they hit it off to the point where Supergirl and him were making out. So they got something going on. Another big part of that was Michael's parents were in the hospital, but we zoom right past that because this issue picks up with Supergirl taking their car past all of the traffic in New York and delivering them straight to Michael's door and just being like, here you go, Mr. and Mrs. whatever your name is, Harris. And they get led up to Michael's apartment, just be like, oh, well, he saved my life. It's the least I could do to get his parents here. But as they enter into the room, Michael's like, hey, Mom and Dad, could you guys wait outside for a minute, please? And they're just like, what? What's going on? What's happening? By the way, where's your dog? Where's Scout? And then a voice from behind says, Scout wasn't being too kind, so I took care of him. And we see it's Red Hood. And Red Hood was waiting for Supergirl. And of course, they've already met. There was a thing over in Batman Superman, I think it was an annual, where they fought somewhat side by side on War World. And so Supergirl straight up grabs Jason by the collar, just like, what did you do with the dog? And he's like, I put it in the bathroom. Jesus Christ, I'm not that much of a monster. Look, I just need to talk to you, all right? And he manages to bat Supergirl's hands away. And she's like, okay, hold on, wait a minute. I'm Kryptonian, you're a friggin' human, you shouldn't be able to do that. I thought you were like normal levels, like Batman. And he's like, that's not really normal. So she gets all up and things, just like, you show up in my friend's house and it's this whole thing of you threatening him, how dare you? So immediately she just grabs him, busts through the window, starts flying across the town, and he's like, do you know how much windows cost? This is not necessary at all. And she's like, oh, how stupid do you think I am? And so Jason pulls out a gun and aims it at Supergirl and starts firing, and it's got like green stuff to it, so you think Kryptonian. And because of that, she ends up dropping Jason, and she realizes like, oh my god, we're like several hundred feet in the air, go limp, I'll catch you. And he's like, nah, I'm good. And so he manages to swing around a flagpole and then just land on his feet. And he's like, I just wanted your attention. And she's like, okay, first off, that's incredible. Secondly, those things you shot me with actually hurt. What is this about? And he's like, well, you see, this gun is one of many alien ordinances that street gangs have started getting their hands on. Starfire and Superman did something like this over in my book a while back, so I think that it's high time you and I team up in order to get the rest of these off the street. Let's go cut them off at the source. And Supergirl's like, okay, why not show up in a less threatening manner? Why not just like shoot me a text or something? And he's like, I've got a reputation to maintain. Also, wanted to meet your new boyfriend. Wanted to see what you were so interested in. I don't quite get it, but whatever. And she's like, all right, well, that's just rude. But why ask for my help? Why not Batman? Just be like, we had our team up before, and I want to see how that's going to work out. I mean, Batman and Superman have their team ups. We're kind of the black sheep. Let's make that a thing. So Supergirl at this point does an X-ray vision on Jason and sees that there's something foreign in his bloodstream. And is like, well, that's probably what's making him so strong, but I don't know what it is. Regardless, yeah, I'll go ahead and stick around with him. So Jason then just jumps off of the rooftop that they're on, down to a gang that I guess is just waiting beneath them, and he starts just going crazy on them, slashing, dashing, all that stuff. And Kara's watching on like, oh man, I know he's a dick, but I got a soft spot for bad boys who can just do this. Jesus Christ. So as she's just chilling out watching the whole thing, Jason's like, are you gonna get involved? What's going on here? And so she just heat visions the guns out of all their hands with like out even breaking a sweat. One of the guys goes running. Kara jumps in the way, stops him, and then Jason grabs hold, being like, you got 5 seconds to tell me where you bought the weapons. And he throws him across the entire length of the alley, starts stepping on his throat, and counts down. And he's like, well, hold on, it's a warehouse. I'll show you where it is. I promise, man, just don't kill me. And so we cut later on to the outside of that warehouse, and Jason's like, did you really think I was going to kill that guy? And she's like, I heard your heartbeat. You weren't lying. And he's like, yeah, I know. And that's why he didn't think I was lying either. And she's like, one day you're going to kill somebody by accident. It's going to mess you up. And he's like, yeah, one day. Totally. So they hear a bunch of things going on inside the warehouse. They start making their way in. And we see inside is some sort of alien wearing a suit. And they're just like, hey, did you sell these tools to like our rival gang as well? And he's like, I don't know, man. All you humans look the same to me, but like these are the best weapons I've sold yet. So if you buy enough of them, your rival gang's gonna have no way of dealing with them. So buy as many as you can. So they're like, okay, but why do you need Earth money? And he's like, don't worry about it. I got reasons for being here. And then at that point, once the exchange has happened, Supergirl just busts in through the wall and says, all right, everybody hands up. The whole gang start firing at her. And she's kind of taken aback. She's like, okay, all right, this sucks. Also, where the hell is Red Hood? And we see Red Hood coming in from behind, saying how he recognized the alien as part of the Frelian Syndicate. And he's like, haha, you fool. She was but the decoy, but I am here sneaking up behind you. And he's just like, haha, you fool. I'm a freaking tech alien. I got giant-ass tentacles and guns and stuff. There's no way you can beat me. So then Jason goes haha again, manages to slice off a bunch of his tentacles, which apparently are ingrained enough in him that it causes him pain. Supergirl just continues to get shot at, as the Frelian dude is like, well, I can just regrow my tentacles, but you're just human, which means if I crush you, you're going to die. So you shouldn't have messed with the superior species. And then Supergirl's like, you know what? I agree with that sentiment. And so she uses her Kryptonian powers to spin super fast, make a whirlwind that sucks up all the dudes who were shooting at her. And then Jason manages to lift the alien up above his head, grab him by the tentacles, and slam him down Loki and Avenger style. And Supergirl's like, okay, hold on. That dude must have weighed many tons with all that tech. Like, how in the hell are you doing this? You gotta tell me. And Jason's like, nah, screw you, Supergirl. And Supergirl's like, fine, whatever, but I'm turning these people into the authorities, and then me and you are gonna have a talk. And as she turns back around, Jason's gone into the wind. And she can't even hear him with super hearing. So a little bit of time passes. We see Supergirl's replaced Michael's mirror and just like, oh yeah, it's the least I could do. I get it if you don't want me to hang out with your son anymore. I am an attractor for some weirder types. And they're just like, oh no, you seem cool. You're great. You helped us during the whole Superman Doom thing. You're awesome. So the parents leave. Her and Michael get some privacy. And Michael's like, hey, I worry about you. You seem like really alone out there. And they share a kiss. And he's like, oh, thank God. I was really concerned that dude was like your boyfriend or something. It seemed like you liked him. And she's like, nah, I like something a little bit more normal. And then we see watching from a nearby rooftop through binoculars is Jason, who says, good for you, Supergirl. And that's the issue. I doubt it has anything further after that. It's fine. Here's the thing. Also going on this week was a Red Hood and the Outlaws issue that also had Red Hood inject some stuff into his blood. I don't know if this is supposed to be that thing or if this is just something else entirely. It really could go either way. Beyond that, I wish we had an answer for that because I doubt we're going to get it in Supergirl. I mean, we might. I doubt it, though. Yeah, I don't know. So it's just a weird little issue. Honestly, everything coming after the Superman Doom storyline, it just kind of feels like we made zero transition from the Red Lantern story to whatever's going on now. And I don't even really have a good grip on what's going on now. I guess it's Supergirl is like finding good things about Earth, but didn't we do that? Didn't we do that as like the second arc of this story? All right. Besides that, it's not a badly written book. It's just kind of weird where it's placed. And a Red Hood team up is not unwelcome, I guess, but it definitely feels unearned. So I'm going to give this I'll give it like a 6. It's not it's not below the 5 mark, but it's definitely not one that I would go back and revisit for pretty much any reason. Justice League number 35, written by Geoff Johns, art by Doug Mahnke and Ivan Reis. So, last issue was like pretty much a separate thing, but Lex Luthor is now in the Justice League, and Bruce is like, okay, but only on the condition that you open up your company to us and let us see everything. And this issue's kind of just following forward with that. So we open up with Lex giving a monologue to a bunch of reporters, and he's basically saying, like, I think that the common man has a problem where they look out at all the problems of the world and say, it's too much. What am I supposed to do about it? And as a common man myself with billions of dollars, I also look out and I have realized that you start wherever you can. And we see all these times the Justice League is going around saving people and everyone's just happy to be helped out. And the Justice League goes the extra mile by like comforting them and doing whatever. And we even get a part where some sort of earthquake or something happened, and Power Ring, who is now officially a member of the League to some extent, is talking to Flash, and Flash is handing out ice creams, and she's like, really? Ice creams after an earthquake? Like, they've lost everything. You think that's appropriate? And he's like, yeah, look, they're happy. What kind of flavor do you want? She's like, pistachio. So we then see the speech continue, and he's just like, the Justice League has taught me the value of unity. Like, for the bigger jobs that we cannot do alone, we have to work together. And that's why I am happy to open up my business to Bruce Wayne here, a partnership that will make everybody better all around the world, beyond our city limits. We're doing great here. So they shake hands and everyone cheers. And we see out in the audience is Clark and Diana. And Clark's just like, okay, so it looks like we're all super chill about this, but actually what we're going to do right now is that Batman is going to go inside of LexCorp, and he's allowed to go wherever he wants, and he's going to specifically look for wrongdoings for Lex Luthor, things like illegal, and the moment he finds anything illegal, we're going to arrest him. So at that point, Bruce Wayne steps up and he's like, oh, I would also like to give a speech. And he steps up. He's like, everything Lex Luthor said, definitely true. Totally love that. But also, my dead parents, there was a young girl whose parent got sick with some sort of someone on the Wayne industry fell ill. Her family couldn't afford a bone marrow transplant, so my father paid for it on his own dime, and then we funded her college, and now she is the world's leading biomedical research analyst named Sun Yen, and she's right here next to me. This is what we can do when we build each other up, and I'm here to continue that and to make my parents proud. And then everyone claps, and Lex is just like, of course he pulled up the dead parents card. And Clark and Diana are out in the audience just being like, it was better than Luthor's speech. I mean, he got the emotional impact. So Bruce and Lex shake hands, and it's just like, oh, yeah, you really invoked your dead parents there, didn't you? And he's like, yes, I miss them every day. And Lex is like, of course you do. Anyway, let's get inside. So they walk in. We see all the Justice League is on standby. Cyborg, Flash, Shazam are all out in the crowds, as well as Power Ring. And Power Ring is just like, hey, Barry, I'm not so good with crowds. I'm really uncomfortable, and the Ring is starting to reach out to me and freak me out a little bit. And the Ring's just like, hey, Jessica, I'm still here. Meanwhile, Aquaman is up on a roof just watching things from the sky. So they start making their way in. They get into a back room, and Lex is like, oh, well, everybody else stay back. I'm going to go in with Bruce here alone. And he's like, oh, you're even leaving Captain Cold, your head of security? Why did you make him head of security again? And he's just like, oh, I like him. He's unambitious. He's not going to do anything. And Bruce is just like, yeah, you might want to talk to Flash about that, because I guarantee he's going to try something. So Lex says, yeah, anyway, where do you want to go first? You can check out anything in my company, anything at all. Where do you want to go? And he's like, I want to see your Superman cloning room. And he's like, oh, the Bizarro room. Yeah, totally. Let's go. So they make their way down to the Bizarro area, and Lex reminisces like, yeah, I really like Bizarro, so I'm going to make another one. I like having a little sidekick, you know? And he calls out Bruce for like, and yeah, you know, I'm going to make another one because, like, how often do you go through Robins? I feel like every time I turn around, another one has either died or flew the nest. And he's just like, yeah, hey, Lex, you may think everyone's just going to forget what an evil monster you've been. They're not. Like, that's not something that's going to happen. And so they talk about whether or not cloning Superman is technically illegal, but because he got funding from the military and full approval to do it the first time, technically it's not. So he's free to go. And Lex is like, all right, well, where else do you want to go? And he's like, oh, just one more lab, your personal lab. And Lex is like, my personal lab? How could you possibly know about that one? He's like, I didn't until you just said it existed. And Lex is like, God, I just fell for that. All right, sure. So They make their way down a hallway. They get to a secret door, and Lex is hesitating, and Bruce is like, oh, what's inside? And he's like, not what, but who? And as they step inside, we see Lena Luthor, Lex's sister, who got terribly ill and is now in a wheelchair. And she's like, oh, Mr. Wayne, I just saw you on television. He's like, oh, yes, call me Bruce. It's a pleasure to meet you. And Lex is like, yep, all right, go ahead, take a look around. My personal lab, you can see anything you want. And Lex is just kind of leading him around saying like, and this is where I've been researching the different effects of kryptonite. And this is where I've made red sun things in order to take down Kryptonians. And this is an arsenal of killing just Kryptonians through normal means. You know, in case the Phantom Zone opens up or, I don't know, something like that. And Bruce is like, now you're just being cocky, man. Don't do that. So at that point, Bruce says, hey, look, you want me to trust you so much. I don't even care about the Superman killing stuff. Like, I got my own kryptonite. How am I supposed to trust a man who deserted his own sister? And he's like, I'm sorry, I don't know what you mean. And he's like, well, the story you tell everybody is that you were so afraid of failing your sister that you didn't even try. But like, that's not the truth. The truth is that you actually did try to help her and you failed and you got so ashamed of yourself that you literally just left her. And how am I supposed to trust a man who's just willing to do that to his own sister? And Lex turns and he's like, I'm going to cure her this time. I've got a cure going on, and one day I'm going to be there when you fail someone you love, and I'm going to bask in that. He's just like, all right, Lex, well, that's just dickish. I don't appreciate that. So at that point, Aquaman's outside. He's still standing on the roof. He sees something going on. There's a glowing man on top of a nearby roof, and he just jumps off a building, and Aquaman's like, hey, Superman might want to catch this dude. And so Superman flies up and goes to catch him. However, the dude explodes. And he explodes right next to the little private lab just on the outside of the building. And he manages to get his way inside. And he's on the comms with someone saying, hey, your job is to kill Lex Luthor. That's the whole reason you're doing this. Get in there and do it. And he's like, all right, I will. So Lena's out cold. The rest of the Justice League is running up to the hole that was made in the side of the building. Lex runs over to get his armor while he tells Bruce to take care of his sister. Meanwhile, the Aquaman, Cyborg, and Flash try to deal with Neutron, who is the guy who was hired, and he starts blasting away at all of them as best he can. But as Lex is going for his armor, he looks around and he sees that there was an explosion that happened through like a secret wall, and a warning alarm's going off saying, warning, warning, Unit X has been breached, and he's freaking out. He's like, oh god, oh no, it's out, we're all gonna die. And we see inside is canister VA-113, which is codenamed as the Amazo virus, which has now been set loose on humanity. So begins the Amazo virus storyline. I think it's like 5 issues long. Yeah, no, I mean, it's a fine enough issue. It's look, we've had like 3 issues so far of Lex like saying and understanding like, oh, I understand, you know, Justice League says we got to work together and da-da-da, but like, does he mean it? Is he actually still evil? I don't know. But after 3 issues of it, like, I get it. I don't need any more of that. So maybe that'll be the whole point of the arc, is like Lex showing rugged individuality does have its place. Maybe it's him understanding the Justice League's way of doing things and actually like working together with people for the greater good. I don't know. I don't know the direction of it. I'm interested to see where it goes. But this one issue is absolutely 100% just set up of, oh, okay, we're getting to the Amazo virus thing. And maybe this guy who wants to kill Lex, but mostly the Amazo virus. So yeah, I'm going to say this is I'll give it a 7. Yeah, 7. It doesn't quite hit a 7.5 for me. I don't know what I'm looking for, but it just isn't there. So 7 for this, and we'll see what happens in part 1 proper next month. Teen Titans number 3, written by Will Pfeifer, art by Kenneth Rocafort. So last issue, it was a whole thing, a robot attacked. There's a gang of Wonder Girls going around. Raven goes to a concert of a band that's dedicated in her honor. Just go listen to that one. So this one opens up back at the concert. We see the band is still playing, and Raven's just vibing out in the audience. And as she is really getting into the music, all of a sudden she lets loose a little bit of her dark magic stuff. And it's just visual. It's just a flare, but it goes off around her, and the entire crowd is like, oh my God. And the people on band are like, it's you. You're Raven. Oh my God. So we cut over to Bunker and Beast Boy, who are walking their way through Battery Park, and they're just like, hey, man, look, we've been walking around for a while, and Beast Boy's just like, I really am tired. Can we just go home and get some sleep? And he's like, nah, man, I just blew up a robot's head. Aren't you wired? Aren't you freaked out? Like, I can do anything right now. And he's like, I could go to sleep. That's about all I could do. And then all of a sudden a mugger shows up and says, empty your pockets. And Bunker's like, sorry, man, superhero suits don't have pockets. And the mugger's like, oh no. And Bunker immediately just makes a giant purple fist and just slams this dude like a quarter mile away down the park. And Beast Boy's like, don't you think that was overkill? And he's like, nah, man, it was a mugger. He's clearly got what he deserved. Now one less criminal on the street. Well, once I call him in. And so he calls up the police, says like, yeah, don't worry about it. He's taken care of. He ain't going nowhere. Meanwhile, the mugger wakes up to see Beast Boy as an ostrich standing over him. And just like, oh God, big bird, big bird. So we go back to the concert. The band is talking to Raven, and he's just like, the lead singer's like, you don't understand. I can't believe I'm even next to you. Like, I saw you one day on the news, and like, I was like, you're my hero. You're everything that I want to be. Like, I wanted to be a superhero like you, but instead I made a band. That's basically the same thing, right? And we see like other people are trying to take selfies with her, and she's not showing up on camera. She's like a vampire. And at that point, we get 2 interns from Star Labs coming up saying like, hey, we just wanted to thank you for saving our lives yesterday. And she's like, oh, you were on the bus? And it's like, no, we were in the Star Labs. Like, we were in the downtown facility. And she's like, oh, that was mainly Bunker. I didn't really do much. And she's like, Bunker, whatever. That guy's style, no substance. You, though, you're the real deal. And then as she's talking, as one of these interns is talking, she suddenly gets incinerated into a skeleton. And we see coming in from behind is the robot lady, who I don't know if has a name yet, but it was revealed in the Future's End story for Teen Titans. Her name is Algorithm, and she's like, oh, glad I made it to the after party. So Raven suits up, gets into her powers, starts defending the people around her, and she's like, ho, you'll find that I am not swayed by technology. I have deep, dark magic. I could summon demons to deal with you, but instead, I'm going to call my friends. So she telepathically reaches out to Cassie, who is asleep on her couch, and she's like, hey, Cassie, I got a problem. Telepathically put the location in your brain. Could you get down here and help? And she's like, yeah, totally. Did you call everybody else? And he's just like, yeah, pretty much everybody was up for it except for Beast Boy. He seems tired. And he's just like, yeah, that sounds about right. So Cassie flies out her window as we see her mom is waiting down by her stoop and notices her flying off. So Algorithm starts getting encroached by the darkness that Raven has, and she's like, yeah, you already tried this trick, and I don't get tricked by the same thing twice. Plus, I got some tricks of my own. And she's able to use electricity or controlled machines or something to turn on all the lights and blind Raven temporarily. She's like, oh, I'm going to kill you, and I'm going to kill all your friends. And at that point, the rest of the Teen Titans all come busting in through a wall, just being like, don't think so. So Wonder Girl goes for the punch, rips off one of her arms. Bunker does the same. And Algorithm's like, oh, all of you at once? This is even better than I was promised. And Bunker's like, wait a minute, hold on. I just blew up your head like 2 hours ago. You're a robot lady. And Wonder Girl's like, oh, it's a robot? That makes this much easier. And so Wonder Girl just throws a punch, shatters her into a million pieces, and Beast Boy comes over as a buffalo and just starts like stamping on the pieces just to make extra sure. So at that point, Wonder Girl gets approached by one of the band members, just be like, hey, you're Wonder Girl, right? My ex-girlfriend was in your gang. And Cassie's like, I'm sorry, my what? And we see the intern that got incinerated, the other intern standing over top of her, just like, oh God, please don't be dead. She's a skeleton, but please don't be dead. And Raven's like, no, don't worry about it. I got this. And she envelops her, and then all of a sudden, she's back to normal. I guess that's one of Raven's powers. So at that point, Red Robin's like, all right, that was too easy. And she said something about being promised. I don't like that. So he goes off to do his own thing. We see the cops show up later on. There is Josiah Power from Star Labs is there as well, and they're talking to Josiah, just being like, hey man, look, we showed up after like 5 minutes. Teen Titans were already gone, but what are you doing here? This definitely ain't your type of scene. And he's just like, oh, I have some interns here, and I'm very proactive in protecting my employees. And he's like, yeah, okay, whatever. So at that point, they say, yeah, we'd all be dead if Wonder Girl wasn't here. And the intern is like, yeah, she punched into 1,000,000 pieces. But Josiah points out, like, did you officers find any of those 1,000,000 pieces? And he's like, no, not a single piece, much less 1,000,000. And we see that Algorithm has already reassembled herself. She's talking to Manchester Black. And they have a camera embedded in the roof of this concert place, this bar, that they're watching all this go on. So we then cut over to Cassie's mom, who's still chilling on the stoop. She's called up Cassie, who's out at a restaurant, just like a late night Denny's with all the Teen Titans. And Cassie's like, hey, where are you? We need to talk. And the mom's like that. And she's like, I'm out with my friends. What's the big deal? Like, if you need me to see you, I can see you like in a few hours when I get back home. And she's like, yeah, well, I'm outside your place right now. I've been sitting on your stoop and I've been watching the news. I know what you've been up to and I've been worried about you. And Cassie's just playing dumb, like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm just out having fun with my friends. And Cassie's mom says there are roving gangs of girls that are dressed up like you, assaulting people on the street. I don't know what you're up to. And then all of a sudden, one of those roving gangs shows up, tells the mom to hang up the phone, and then I guess they have a talking to with her. So at that point, Cassie doesn't realize anything's wrong. She's like, oh, okay, mom just hung up on me. Whatever, bitch. So they all continue eating and having their time, and they're like, well, I wonder what Red Robin's up to. Why couldn't he join us? And we see Red Robin manage to steal the entrance badge to one of the interns. He goes to Star Labs. It's super early in the morning, and he's been researching all night trying to get in. And as he's on the computer, all of a sudden, a little dancing emoji version of Algorithm comes across the screen, says hello, and then a giant electric blast just comes out of the computer, starts attacking him. And the computer's like, oh, no weapons, no powers. And no idea that I need everything I need just to beat you. And we see he keeps on getting attacked. He tries to get on the comm to call up the Titans for backup, but he's blasted by one of the electrical blasts. And as Algorithm has him down, just says, oh, too easy. So she's got him at gunpoint and says, say goodbye, Tim Drake, because I guess she knows his identity. I think if I were reading this in trade, like collectively all at once, this would be a good read. I don't think that there is any issue with the actual story itself being told. I think the issue is the month wait in between, and in this case 2 months, because last time was the Future's End tie-in, because all of this is playing out basically sequentially. Like where one issue ends, the next one picks up immediately afterwards, and there's not really any time passing. So this feels like one big, long, connective story, and I'm missing out on something by reading it with gaps of several weeks between each one. So, I mean, that's the way the story was put out. I kind of have to judge it based on that metric of how it was presented, but I do want to point out that reading it as a trade would probably be much better. So overall, I think because of the way that this is kind of paced, I am going to have to give it like a 6.5. I'm losing something every time I come back to this series because it keeps on like reintroducing things and like reestablishing things, but also not going as deep as I would have liked them to. So that every time I'm coming in, I'm kind of like, wait, right. Does Algorithm have a name yet? Like what all does she know? Has Manchester Black actually said what his plan is yet? Like I'm a bit lost between the weeklies of this. So yeah, it's a 6.5. It's not its book's fault. It's just the way the comic books really are published. And this is much better read in the trade, I'm sure. Batman Eternal number 28, written by Snyder, Tynion, Fawkes, Higgins, and Seeley, art by Megan Hetrick. So we pick up this issue, and interspersed in this issue, but I'm literally just going to cover all of it now because it only eats up like 4 pages. With Red Hood, he's down at a bar, and he's just beating people up. And it seems like it's completely for nothing. As he finishes beating them up, he calls out to the Outlaws saying, hey, I'm coming home. I'll be back soon. And Starfire's on the other end just being like, look, maybe you should stay there for a while and take care of things, or at the very least, go say bye to Batgirl. Clearly, that's something you want to do. And we cut over to Batgirl as she's still dangling Jason Bard up and down these buildings, trying to get out an answer as to why he is not helping Jim Gordon get out of custody. We see Red Hood wanting to say bye to Batgirl, goes to her apartment and stops him just like, hey, I'm sneaking in through the window so your roommate doesn't notice. Just wanted to say hi, or bye, I should say. And as she gets in, there's murder boards up on the wall of like newspapers featuring Jason Bard and a bunch of batarangs like embedded into his face. And he's like, all right, well, I know enough to know where this is going. So as Jason Bard is dangling over the edge of another one of the buildings, he's basically like, look, you've been doing this for hours. Just, if you're going to drop me, just do it. End it already. You know it. I know it. I deserve it. Just do it. And it looks like she's about to let go, but then Red Hood shows up and is just like, hey, Batgirl, stop. Look, give me the rope. This isn't you. You need to not do this. And she's like, oh, God, what have I done? Oh, geez. And Red Hood takes the rope and he's like, hey, it's fine. This isn't you. It's me. And he just lets go of the rope. And Jason Bard starts plummeting down to his death. And Red Hood's just like, hey, you trusted him. He treated this city like a friend, and he abused that trust. It's like a bad parent, and he deserves to die because of it. And Barbara sees this and lunges after the rope at the last second. Manages to get it. Manages to not let him splatter on the pavement. But because the rope was wrapped around his ankle, it does cause it to like sprain or break or something like that. Something cracks. And that's where Jason's like, you were better than all of us Robins, Barbara. Like, don't even worry about it. You're definitely still better than me. So the next day, they're watching the sunrise, and Barbara and Jason are getting a little bit cozy, and Jason offers, hey, do you want to leave Gotham? You can do that. And she's like, no, I think there's more in this world to see, but like, I need to stay and help Gotham right now. And hey, maybe if you had something more, you would stay as well. Snuggle, snuggle. And he's like, no, I'm out. Bye. And he puts on the mask and says, it's right what you said before. I'll never be Dick Grayson. And he flies off. So that's that storyline. Then we get to the primary storyline. So the main part of it here is Catwoman got captured by Bone, the gangster that she beat up in her own book a while back. And he's basically taunting her, saying like, hey, I've got this whole club sold out. They're all here to see Catwoman be murdered. I sold tickets for it. And I had this whole thing going on, a big like block in my head, because Batman is the one who saved me from you killing me before. Do you know what it's like for a guy like me to owe Batman? I can't have that on my conscience, so I'm going to kill you outright. And therefore, in my mind, we'll all be even Stevens. We see the young girl Jade is still there with her uncle Ivanescu, and she's like trying to look away. She doesn't want to see this happening. And Ivanescu's like, no, you need to watch this. There are no friends in this business. There are only enemies and people who share an interest. And as he's saying this, Croc comes up the elevator to meet up with everybody. So we cut over to Flamingo that Batman was still dealing with. And Batman's explaining to Julie over the comms, like, your dad, Alfred, we had a mouse problem in the mansion once. Alfred tied a bell around one of the mice's legs, and then we followed it into the wall, and that's how we found where the rest of the nest was. I'm doing that with Flamingo. So Flamingo wakes up, he gets a text saying the Great Cat Massacre is going on for anyone who wants to show, and so he drives off, and therefore Batman follows suit. So once Bone believes everybody who's going to be there is showing up, he gets ready, and he's like, all right, I'm here to kill Catwoman. Here we go. And Catwoman looks over at Jade and begs her to close her eyes as he takes a bat up above his head. And then all of a sudden, the doors bust down, and it's Killer Croc. And he's like, Ivanescu, you have Jade, and I want her. She's part of my tribe now. And Jade's super happy to see this. Bone's like, holy crap, Killer Croc's real? That's crazy. Tiger Shark is there, and he's like, someone help me skin that thing. I want it as a belt. But as people start aiming to shoot at Croc, Shark knocks away their gun, saying he doesn't want holes in it. Meanwhile, Catwoman takes advantage of the chaos to break one of Bones' legs, and so he's out of this as well. Tiger Shark quickly gets knocked down. Croc's on a rampage. Nothing's going to be able to stop him. And Jade comes over up to where Catwoman is being held. She's still got her hands bound, and she's like, hey, I need you to come over here, get me out of this, and then we can get out of here. Meanwhile, Bone goes over to Ivanescu and says, hey, you got a gun. Catwoman's up there. Take the shot. Shoot her. Do it now. You have to do this. And he's like, oh, it's been years since I shot a gun. I'm not really good with my aim anymore. And he's like, nope, do it right now. Take it, take it, take it. And he pulls the trigger, and we don't see it directly, but we see Killer Croc's reaction. He didn't hit Catwoman. He ended up hitting Jade. So we see the building is absolutely in turmoil. Flamingo doesn't seem to notice. He just walks into the building, no problem. Batman stops him, knocks him out as he hears the gunfire down the hall. He sees Bone being dragged away by one of his goons, and Bone's just like, Jesus Christ, a giant alligator in there. Everything's screwed up. You almost wish that Batman was here, and Batman's just grinning behind him. We see Catwoman is distraught. Ivanescu is dead. Croc is just completely broken as he's cradling Jade's body, and he's like, just throw me in Arkham. Like, you can do it. They took Jade. They took my soul. The demons of Arkham can have me. I don't even care anymore. So that all happens. We see Batman come in. He's about to attack Croc because he doesn't know the situation. And Catwoman defends him, kicks Batman out of the way. Batman's like, what the hell happened here? And why are you in the middle of this? You're causing chaos. And she starts crying and like tries to rely on Batman, just like, oh, I could have stopped it. Innocents were caught in the crossfire. And Batman like starts to piece it together. He's like, Selina, I'm here, or you can talk to me. And she's like, no, you're not. I got no one. I'm on my own here. So we get the final page is at Blackgate. Rex Calabrese is waiting for Jade to arrive with more contraband goods. Of course, she's not going to show up, but Catwoman does, pins Rex to the wall and says, hey, I need your contacts. I'm going to get in there. I'm going to assert the natural order. I'm the daughter of the lion, and I'm taking control of the mobs. So, cool. I mean, it took like 3 issues of focusing on Jade to get to the point of, okay, I get it now. This is what her ultimate purpose was, but fair enough. I think it does a great job with Croc. It's hard to describe of just showing how broken he is when Jade gets shot, but like, it does a fantastic job. It really does sell it. I gotta say, primary complaint though is the Batgirl Red Hood plot. The idea that Red Hood would let Jason die because of what he did, love it. Great. Awesome. That last page of Batgirl saying, hey, how about you and me? And then Jason being like, no, please do not do that. I understand that Babs is in an emotional spot right now, but do not tease that. We do not want that. Stop making that a thing. Yeah, beyond that, it's an okay issue. It's setting up, obviously, for more future stuff with Catwoman taking over mobs and whatever else going on. It seems like that's kind of going to be this next part of the book. Catwoman's taking over the mob, and Hush is just going around doing things, and Batman's trying to catch up with him. And then I'm fine with both those plots. It seems perfectly reasonable. So I'm going to give this one just a flat 7. It was well drawn, well written, didn't have any major problems with it, except for that one Batgirl X Red Hood thing. Please, God, no. Future's End number 24, written by Azzarello, Lemire, Jurgens, and Giffen, art by Jesus Marino. So we open up with the Stormwatch crew making their way off of Brainiac's planet thing, being pursued by a ton of robots, and Black Adam's running intermediary. So as they're trying to get going, Hawkman's trying to wake up Engineer, trying to get her to become D-Brainiac, as Black Adam's just like, all right, I'll keep fighting him off, but we have a deal, you better honor that. Engineer does end up getting D-Brainiac. She just kind of shakes out of it, and as soon as she wakes up, she looks around, she sees Hawkman, they plant a kiss on each other. And he's like, oh, thank God, I thought you were dead. And we see Black Adam still trying to fight against the robots as the Atom, it's very confusing, says, okay, we're coming up on the ship. I'm lowering the shield and we're going to have to move quick. So they crash their way in. Very rough landing. Everyone gets their way out as soon as possible. Engineer's like, I'm going to the main, to start driving. You guys don't wait up. Frankenstein and Black Adam are going to stay back in order to fight back the robots. But then as soon as Black Adam gets in the ship, he's like, we got to go now. And it's like, what? It's just a couple of robots. And you see just how many are coming in to where nobody's going to get the chance to run. Then we cut over to Cadmus Island, and we get, as far as I can tell, a new plot. So Mr. Miracle is out washing his face. He is bloodied, he is bruised, and he is beaten. He starts walking back into the woods, and he comes across the body of Fury, who is also introduced in the Earth 2 books. I don't think she's been in this one for that much. But he wakes her up, and she's like, oh, you're still whining. Well, I'm knowing you. The other guy looks a lot worse than you do, right? And he kind of shoots Fury a look, and Fury's like, wait a minute, hold on. I'm the one who caused this? And Mr. Miracle describes, yeah, you were being controlled by Brother Eye. I didn't have that thing going on, but like I saw you, and I had to take it out and remove your implant from your back as well. So sorry about that. And she's like, don't worry, don't like care about me. Don't do that. And he's like, I'm not going to pretend like I don't. And she's like, rule number 1, don't let your enemies see who you care about. So they start marching their way through the woods, and Fury doesn't know anything about what's going on. So Miracle starts explaining, there's a satellite, Brother Eye, he took out these implants and managed to take control of everybody on the island, all the superheroes, and Mr. Miracle managed to beat the controlled version of Fury because Fury was just killing everybody. And she's like, oh, you managed to take me down? And he's like, no, I took out Brother Eye. There's a big difference. I don't think I'd be able to take you down. And she's like, oh, that's sweet. So he's basically saying, look, the only thing I can think of with this island is that we purge the systems, and Brother Eye is the first thing that we can figure out in order to do that. So Fury says, all right, let's go get rid of Brother Eye. He says he still doesn't know how, and she's like, oh, we'll burn that bridge when we get to it. Then we cut over to Columbia University, and we meet up with Madison and Raymond, and they're becoming closer friends. They're talking a lot more. Madison starts asking about Raymond's past, about like his family or whatnot, and he's like, I had a dad, but he took off when I was a kid, and then my mom died in the Battle of Pittsburgh. And she's like, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't know about your family. And he's like, yeah, there's so many of us that are alone nowadays, even the people on the football team, like it's not even that uncommon of a thing. And Madison's like, oh, well, I saw you hanging out with Jason Rush before. Are you still cool with him? And he's like, no, we are not cool with him, and I'd rather not talk about that. So she explains her own trauma with her father in the war and all that sort of stuff. And they start to bond to the point where they say, oh, well, we can be alone together, or maybe together alone, but you get the gist of it. So he goes off on a separate way, and in walks Tim Drake, a.k.a. Cal. And she's just like, are you following me? And he's like, no, I'm not following you. I was just looking around for you. I found you, and I wanted to give you this. And he hands her like this beautiful-looking rose and says, look, I never should have lied to you. I'm so sorry. I should have been open from the beginning. And she takes the flower. She tears up a little bit, and she's like, you lied to me, though. So she's still upset about it. She casts aside the rose, and she's like, oh, not so easily, not so soon, definitely not yet. So she runs away. We then go to Jason Rush and Dr. Yamazaki, who are working on the transportation tech, the teleportation stuff. And they finally have got, like, it seems like a corpse, honest to God. It seems like, they say it's a mannequin, but it looks like a corpse. And they are ready to power up the systems. They get everything going, and they engage it, and they see it worked. They managed to teleport this thing across the room. No harm, no foul. They're super pumped about it. And she's immediately, Yamazaki's like, now we're going to go into human trials. And Jason's like, I'm sorry, maybe we should focus like at first on mice or like fruit or anything that's alive instead. Like, we don't even know how that's going to work. And he's just like, Jason, why are you always trying to get in the way of this? Well, I'm getting the feeling that you're actually trying to sabotage this whole thing. And then for our final scene, we go over to Africa, where, if you remember the plot of Constantine looking for the real Superman because there's a big-ass red robot coming their way, Constantine's just chilling as his friends come back and say, hey, Superman's still not here. We don't know where he's at. He went after your monster. And Constantine's like, my monster's up in my head. I'm that messed up, Midge. And they're just kind of talking about this, trying to figure out like what to do if Superman possibly died against this thing. And then whatever the guy's name is, Tommy, he, like, that's a recurring thing, is that Constantine's constantly calling him the wrong name. But Tommy's just like, all right, this was all a bad idea. We should just leave. I hate every moment of this. Let's go. And Constantine's like, hey, just wait a second, all right? And he keeps on like correcting Tommy, like in everything he says, until all of a sudden Tommy's chest just bursts open, starts spewing blood, and we see the big red robot has arrived. And Constantine just gives up immediately. He falls to his knees. He's like, and for my next trick, everything falls apart and nothing works anymore. Midge gets picked up by some form of telekinesis. She starts being tortured by the robot, starts like glowing with light and seemingly explodes, or is about to explode. And Midge is begging for John to help, and he's just like, I can't do anything. Maybe one time I could have, but like, I can't do anything for you now. And he looks down, he's broken. And then up from behind the red robot says, I can, and it's Superman. And he punches the robot in the face and is seemingly ready to go to town. And that's where the issue ends. There's nothing in it that I inherently dislike. I mean, it's more of what it was. It was more just continuing on with plot stuff. It did feel a little bit convenient that Engineer was able to just shake off the fact that Brainiac was in control of her. Like, that seems like it should be more difficult to do, but sure, I'll take it. The Madison stuff of, oh, but you lied to me. I accept that from this book as much as I absolutely hate it. Sure, if that's just going to be her character for the rest of the time. That being said, if she's going to start getting chummy with Ronnie, and Ronnie is, of course, himself a superhero, seems like she has a type. So beyond that, it's an okay issue. Nothing great, nothing stand out. Art's perfectly fine as well. It's just the continuation, the next part. So I'm going to give this one I'll give it a 6.5. It's not quite hitting up at 7 levels for me, but what you gonna do? Earth 2 World's End number 2, written by Bennett, Johnson, and Wilson, art by a whole bunch of people. So we open up pretty much right where we left off. One of the fire pits opened up and out stepped a little girl, boy, something named Klee, and is openly challenging all of the heroes of like, oh, I will kill you all if you choose not to serve Darkseid. So what's going to be? And we see all the heroes come in and just start attacking. They're like, don't you dare talk about Darkseid here. We have some past trauma that we are not over. So they all start attacking. And Klee's just like, all right, let me once again say this, as he starts just demolishing all of them as they approach and going crazy. Just like, I am Klee, Fury of Apocalypse. For you, I am War. Do you submit? And they keep on attacking, and Klee just smiles and just like, all right, let's get some blood then. So we cut over to Jimmy Olsen, who sees that these beings are coming out of fire pits all around the world. We've got one in London, one in Brazil, and one in South Africa. And immediately Commander Khan calls up Batman being like, hey, we don't got the manpower to do this. I'm going to need at least one of you heroes to come over and help with this stuff. So Batman says, all right, Green Lantern, go to Brazil, take care of what's going on there, do what you gotta. And Green Lantern takes off immediately, ready to go. Hawkgirl is still flying with Dr. Fate. They were already on a track over to London, and they were just like, all right, keep going there. You'll take care of that one. Flash is in charge of still checking on all of the refugee strongholds, making sure that they're good. And then the South African one apparently jumped right into the ocean. So Aquawoman is like, guess I'm in charge of there. So we then see that all of the parademons that are attacking them along with Klee are more powerful. They're a bit different. And Red Tornado comes to the conclusion these were people who were abducted back in the day. They were civilians, and now they have been turned into parademons. They are basically reanimated corpses. And so Batman's like, all right, well, if they're corpses, no need to hold back. So we see Kara and Val Zod start talking, and he's trying to say something. She's like, not yet. Don't, not yet. Meanwhile, Red Tornado, while everyone else is busy trying to fight off the parademons, Red Tornado takes the initiative and goes right after Klee, just like, get away from my daughter. So we then cut over to Khan, who's being told by Major Sato that, hey, look, all of this stuff happening on Earth is really, really bad, but we got something worse, because our long-range satellites are slowly being knocked out one by one, which means there is a giant planet-sized thing coming to us from deep space. And immediately Khan's just like, oh my god, okay. Have we found Oliver Queen yet? We could really use an Oliver Queen right around now. We really got to get him involved. So meanwhile, over on Apocalypse, we get a bunch of like Z-tier apocalyptians who I've never heard of, who are having a little conference about like where's Darkseid? Like, we're dealing with this stupid little Earth 2 thing going on. Where the hell's Darkseid in this book? And everyone's trying to, like, say, like, things that they're doing. But then this one dude steps up named Arcanus, who is like, you doubt Apocalypse, but in times of crisis, the planet itself will send an emissary born of itself. It's happened before, it'll happen again, so chill. And we cut back over to Geneva, where Cleese knocked down Red Tornado and kind of just taunts her, just like, yeah, I reanimated those corpses, but, like, how's that any different from you? You think you're alive in there? You're a robot with a human brain. Like, you are just as much a reanimated corpse as anything else. You're an abomination, man. And Lois just goes crazy, just like, oh, you shouldn't have done that. So Lois gets knocked down. We see one of the soldiers that was alongside fighting with them gets dragged up to Klee by parademons, and Klee just stabs her through the chest and was like, okay, if you really think you're human, go on and save her. Fight for her humanity, as she starts very quickly transforming into a parademon. So, all right, this is a totally different thing. Over in Puerto Rico, Dr. Bedlam was controlling Terry Sloan, Michael Holt, and Mr. Miracle. Miracle was not there physically. He was being held in a cell. But they're all up on top, like, praying to Darkseid because Apocalypse called ahead. And as they're doing so, Miracle causes a mental thing in Bedlam that allows Terry and Michael to say keywords that breaks Dr. Bedlam's mind, and it puts him into a susceptible mental state, so where now he is trapped inside the labyrinth that is Terry Sloan's brain. We see Mr. Miracle, despite the fact that he was chained up and was being watched by Barda and Fury. There's a big warning signal, error, something's going on. And Michael Holt busts in and is like, hi, ladies, moment of your time, please. Meanwhile, inside Terry Sloan's mind, Mr. Miracle is also there. They just start looking around and trying to figure out where Bedlam is. However, they come to the conclusion that Bedlam either is truly 100% lost in here, or he's on the hunt. And we see, as soon as they come to that realization, they are attacked by a whole bunch of people, specifically little kids inside of Terry's mind. And they bring Terry down to the next level as Bedlam stands over them. Miracle's kind of just out of this whole thing. Terry's the only one really being attacked. And Terry's like, these are all the children that I had to kill in order to ignite the fire pits to save Earth. I came to terms with that. I put them out of my mind. And Bedlam's like, no, you didn't. You may say you did, but that's like hardcore evil, man. You don't just slip away from that. So he starts begging. He's saying, I'm sorry, please, no, please don't. And Bedlam's impressed. He's like, wow, you do have a conscience. All right, fair enough. Miracle attacks Bedlam in the chaos. Terry manages to get up and, like, puts his thumbs into his eye sockets, and then throws Bedlam down into the pit where the kids are, saying, let's see how many victims you have. And he falls prey to it and says, okay, apparently more than me. And then in the real world, it seems that Bedlam has just decayed into ashes. Sure. So Green Lantern is flying across the Gulf of Mexico trying to get to Brazil. Khan comes over the radio and says, like, hey, everybody, we're not having a good time, so if you are religious, please pray for us, because we're going to lose a lot of heroes today. And Green Lantern's like, but it's more than just that. I can feel, even now, the elemental forces are gathering. And we see, at the heart of the planet, we see a representative of the green, the red, the rot, as well as one that seems very watery and one that seems very windy. So I'm sure that'll come into play. We then go to Amazonia, where Terry, Michael, and Mr. Terrific all arrive, and Khan's like, hey, Terry, I hoped you were dead. And Terry's like, same to you, man. But hey, here's the thing you guys need to know. Apocalypse, the planet itself, is on a crash course trajectory with planet Earth, and we have 24 days until it crashes into us. Mind you, there are 24 issues left in this series. So we then cut back to Klee in the middle of the fight, just like, look, you guys keep destroying parademons if you want. They're just playthings. I can always make more toys, for instance. And then she slashes at Red Tornado, Power Girl, and Huntress. They start becoming not parademons, but possessed by Klee. And She's like, yeah, see, you would have made great Furies for Darkseid. So Huntress goes after Batman, saying, what gives you the right to be Batman? You're not the real Batman. Kara calls out Val-Zod for having been in hiding ever since her parents tried to save him from Krypton exploding. And then Red Tornado puts them both in a tornado blast and says, like, oh, you two, you're not the real Batman or Superman. You're not here to save us. And then Klee is just like, see? New toys. So that's the issue. Yeah, it's Earth 2. Like, that's I said this last week's Earth 2 book, where it felt like the 3 books that are currently set on Earth 2, which is World's Finest, Earth 2, and this book, all kind of feel like they're telling the exact same story at the exact same time. So it's kind of like this book doesn't do anything big to separate itself as why it is a weekly event. It more so feels like they just need more issues to tell the story that they were going to tell anyway. So, I mean, it's fine. It's a good enough issue, but like, it's not an event book. It's not like oh, this is so important it needs to be separated. It's just more of the same. So, is it bad? No, it's fine. It's just continuing the story that was set up in Earth 2. It's just not anything big. Because of that, I'm gonna, I don't know, I want to say 7. Like, if I look at this objectively, I think it is a 7 in terms of writing and like prowess and stuff like that. But the fact that it is just kind of more Earth 2 and not being anything bigger, that does hit. It does knock it down a bit. So I think I'm going to end on a 6.5, but like, hopefully there is something going on in this book that sets it apart from the other Earth 2 books. I think that that's what this really needs in order to make me care about it. And that's it. That is all the comics that came out from DC Comics this October 15th, 2014. And as I said at the top of the episode, next week we have yet another action-packed 16-comic, probably 3-hour-long episode, because why not? You know, just not like I'm doing anything with my life outside this show. Not like I have other things I need to care about. No, I'd love to sit here for 3 hours and talk about why Flash is doing whatever. So why is it going to be a long episode? Well, let me tell you. I'm going to go run through the comics real quick. We have, in no particular order here, Catwoman, Harley Quinn, Superman, Red Lanterns, Aquaman, Flash, Secret Origins, Infinity Man, Star-Spangled War Stories, Justice League Dark, our 3 weeklies, Batman Eternal, Earth 2 World's End, and New 52 Future's End. And then, on top of that, we have 2 new number 1s, Arkham Manor number 1, and Deathstroke number 1. And then, on top of all that, we have the headliner, which is the next issue of Grant Morrison's Multiversity. This one is The Just, which follows, I believe, Earth 16, if I am correct. So, just going over that once more, so you get the gist of it. We have an event comic going on with Red Lanterns. Secret Origins is already a longer anthology book, so that's going to take some time. Arkham Manor, new number 1. Deathstroke, new number 1. And Multiversity, not only Multiversity being its own headliner thing with an extra page count, but also Grant Morrison, so you know it's going to be dense as hell. All of that with 16 comics going on. It's going to be a long one, so buckle in when we get there. But yeah, I will complain about that more next week. For this week, though, if you have any comments on any of the comics that I looked at this week, next week, any week at all, go ahead and hit those up in the comment section below this YouTube video if you're watching the YouTube video. If you're listening to the audio version, you can track us down through a number of social media platforms. We have a Discord, we have a subreddit, we have a Patreon, and that's all that I really care about. So hit up any of those and do whatever you want. Pretty much no rules. There are some rules, but don't think that whatever you want to say is against the rules. Unless you want to say something mean about me, because that's against the rules. Anyway, I have to go do stuff prior to recording 16 comics for next week, so wish me luck on that. I will hopefully see you next time. Be sure to give this a positive interaction, and thank you so much for listening or watching or however it is you consume this podcast. Be sure to tune in next week, and always try to remember, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.